Verdin. Monique is a transdisciplinary artist who documents the complex relationship between environment, culture, and climate in Southeast Louisiana. She's a citizen of the Human Nation and director of the Land Memory Bank and Seed Exchange. She's co-producer of the documentary My Louisiana Love, and her work has been included in a variety of environmentally inspired projects, including the multi-platform performance Cry You One and the collaborative book Return to Yakni Chido, Human Migrations. Please welcome to the stage, Monique. I'll leave this right here for you. Thank you
so much. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I just want to give a shout out to all the organizers and for the folks who prepared the food for us. It was really fantastic. So, yeah, I do a lot of things, and a lot of my work has really been wrestling with how we got here. And my story, part of my story, begins in this place, which is known as Point au Chien or Point au Chien, depends on who you ask, Point of the Dogs or Point of the Oaks. But it's where my Homa grandparents come from, in the Yakni Chido. And I've also been thinking a lot about how different the world might be if we identified where we came from by saying where our water source is coming from. And I've been thinking a lot about how most of my body is made up of the Mississippi River and how disgusting it is that we drink water in Bulbuncha, also known as New Orleans, coming out of the Mississippi River. But also thinking a lot about the ocean systems and the privilege that I have to live in a place that is a power point on the planet where 48% of the United States watershed is being drained out and returning on its water cycle, whether that's to the sky or out into the sea, going out into the Gulf of Mexico. And also how the place that I call home is often cited as being Cancer Alley. Where I live is just north of the dead zone, where we have these incredible algal blooms because of the nitrogen runoff. And when I was 18 really, just about 19 years old, I started taking photographs of my relatives who live in the bayous, at the ends of the bayous in South Louisiana. And my practice, and sometimes people will introduce me as being an artist and activist, and I'm like, no, don't say those words, especially activist in South Louisiana. And really, I'm just trying to let people know what's happening in my home and how our interdependence is not only with each other, but the planet is in an interdependent relationship, and what happens in South Louisiana matters for what happens in Alaska and all places all over the world. So just to kind of orient us, I'm from the big toe of the boot-shaped state in St. Bernard Parish, but where the Bayou Lafourche is coming down, that's the Yakni Chido. It's between the Atchafalaya and the Mississippi, which are the same rivers. This is one of the largest river basins on the planet, and we are losing land at one of the fastest rates in the world. The statistic that you can kind of scientists roll their eyes at, but it's the easiest way for us to get our heads around the fact that we are losing land in this rapid rate of every 90 to 100 minutes. A football field is lost from our coast. And I think it's really important for Homa people who have been pushed to the ends of the bayous. Our struggles with land loss, of course, did not begin with climate change, did not begin with sea level rise, or the thousands of miles of canals that they've put through our wetlands for oil and gas exploration and navigation, or the leveeing of the Mississippi, but is really rooted to colonialism and multinational corporations who are making decisions in places, multi-generational consequences coming from greed, really, and short-sightedness. In 2012, my best friend and I released a film called My Louisiana Love, and at that time, we were not saying climate change in the ways that we say it now. And I was just thinking how when Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005, I was 25 years old, and how grateful I am for that event in that it was really, a punch to the face and the gut and the heart all at once, which has really challenged me to adapt, to be honest about where we are, and also to try to translate the science. And even, this place, Ile de Jean Charles, it was in the news a lot not too long ago as the climate relocation project, the first ever that the Housing and Urban Development has funded. It's been a complete disaster in many cases. And when you take people off the bayou, you take them away from their bayou side, you're taking them away from their ability to literally feed themselves and their families. And so this community, which has lost most of its land since the 1930s, has been relocated 30 miles inland now, and we're all wrestling with this. Do we retreat? And the reality is that there is no place that we can run to where we will be able to step out of this climate crisis that we're all facing. So, the topic of this, the role of creativity in the climate crisis, when I was thinking about it and thinking about my work and thinking about how so much of what I've been trying to do is to unsilence the stories of my elders. And after Hurricane Katrina, I went back to school. I was an conventional student, much older than most of my peers. And my mom people would say, "Oh, well, what's Monique getting her degree in?" And she would say, "Oh, in saving the wetlands." And I'd have to be like, "No, Mom, I'm getting my degree in mass communication." And she's like, "What is that?" So I'm still trying to make sense of that. But I've gotten into this practice of layering time and place. And so what you're seeing here are United States Geological Survey maps, one from the 1930s layered on top of or beneath one from the 2000s. And my elder, Viviane Hotard, who taught me more at my grandmother's kitchen table than I ever learned in college, at her home place, Pont Barré, where oil and gas was first found in South Louisiana, where her family was run off of their land in the 1930s. And this is in the Yaquishito, which South Louisiana is losing land at one of the fastest rates on the planet, and the Yaquishito is really ground zero for that land loss. Another wise teacher of mine, a guide, Verdin. This photograph of him, I've also gotten into the practice of doing more digital collaging. So this was taken here. This photograph of him, this portrait of him was taken here in D.C. right after the BP oil spill in 2010. And I was really shocked as we were being shuffled around the halls of Congress, and I was asking folks, like, does this really work, this whole lobbying thing? And there was really, like, well-dressed interns eating ice cream. It was National Ice Cream Day on the mall. I don't know. And then there we are with these jars of oil, And he had never left the bayou. He had never gotten on a plane before, and at that time was suffering from esophageal cancer, and it was the beginning of him losing his voice. And he said, "You speak for me." And I feel like I'm still in that space where I'm trying to just let people know what's happening and the injustices and the layers, that it didn't begin yesterday, that this has been a practice that has been the extraction of land and labor and lives that continues to this day. The plantation economy is still the society that we are being ruled by. Nature does not create straight lines, and we're wrestling with, how do we stay in a place that's becoming more water than land? And so I've worked in many different ways. Of course, I use photographs. I'm also obsessed with maps and collaborations. All of the work that I do now is with many different folks. And this is just one of the maps from our film, My Louisiana Love, and shows all of the oil and gas and the production facilities and the pipelines and the wells that have been uncapped from the past. And what it doesn't show is the many liquefied natural gas terminals that are being built or have already been built here in Louisiana and in South Texas. And it also does not show you what's coming, which is carbon capture sequestration. They call the Gulf South the sacrifice zone. And we continue to be in the sacrifice zone. So you guys may know what carbon capture sequestration is. It's being pushed as a false solution to our climate crisis, but essentially it's taking carbon either from these facilities, they call it Cancer Alley because it's got a reputation, and there's over 170 facilities between Baton Rouge and the Gulf of Mexico. But where they produce the petrochemicals, but also being able to ship them on these pipelines that already exist and then injecting it deep into the earth. And the science, we don't know. We've never done this before, right? So they're saying it's safe. And we have a new governor, Jeff Landry, who's very much so, oil and gas has been in the pockets of our politicians for a long time. But Jeff Landry is really pushing this forward. So I'll just end here because I've come to time, and want to say if you're interested in seeing My Louisiana Love, we recently have made it open source and available thanks to PBS and the Native American Public Television, also known as Vision Maker now, for funding My Louisiana Love. But you can find it at the schoolhouse4.org. Schoolhouse for Reimagining Education is our nonprofit. And I've worked on this project called Cry You One, which you can also find that online, cryouone.com, and it's a multi-platform, many stories of folks, and then also this theater piece, which was a 1.5 mile procession that happened starting in 2013. It had quite a long life. And we took people on this journey along a ghost forest in the central wetlands of St. Bernard Parish to a pumping station where just, by default, pumping fresh water out of neighborhoods was allowing this baby forest to grow back. And getting people to see it, to experience it, to witness it, to walk the levee with us was a radical moment for me. And so I'm currently working on a project called Invisible Rivers, and also thinking about how there's so many stories, there's so many places, there's so many watersheds that connect us all. And how my personal life, I've allowed a lot of my personal details of my life to be out there in My Louisiana Love, and also our book, Return to Yakni-Shido, but how sacrificing that allows a window for a planetary perspective in this interconnected reality that we're all living and surviving, and hopefully finding ways to love and learn and dance and eat good food and be in good company. Thank you.